Jeremiah. It's not a whole day, it's not the whole that right there. You know, I don't, it got me the other day because I said something. So, yeah, that's seems for how it is. Yes, I sure, I'm sure. No, we are still doing the prices of the looking. We don't get so. It's been kind of. Right, we had two, we had so. January. I heard it's like, yeah, the property. Once it's the property. They want to hey, what you want out? And then no, space. You can't say. Brother Alabama, what? I wanted to say it loud. Yeah. That's the rest of the way. So what's our third guy's gonna choose? The person. Watch everyone. That's just the time of the. And I think Gemini like at the time. Yeah. What's up to each other? I don't any more strict than that. I'm so tired to tell you this giving results. You know, it's really. Oh my God, so it's all stress, you know, something first, it's killing me. And it got worse. And so I finally went to the doctor and I got all the medication. And I took one that said, that's where you're ready, it said, yeah, the D, and that's what you said. No, but there's Alice. That's what? What was that for? Anyway, it's great. Oh, I'm not there. Oh, yeah. Yes.
To use Devon Tom, the Ryan Hill Sessler for the monthly safe message. Devon, take it away.
Our security emphasis for gentlemen that was on back in the city. Preventive risk, protest activity and flood awareness. These areas require active intention, these approaching factors affecting our service operation and passenger behaviors. Warmer weather, historic and historically motivated, starting uptick and theft, vandalism, and unauthorized access into vehicles. Everyone can combine this lot with odors, period of valuables and damages, especially at trailers, some of the parking areas. Demonstrations and protests are expected across major metro areas in one jurisdiction. While most remain peaceful, transit systems are advised to maintain situational awareness, these potential disruptions, the crowd access to their routes and terminals. Also, limited bags and suspicious packages. There's been increased summer travel, and need higher passenger turnover. So we'll be enforcing our policy today. So you see something today. Thank you.
One village. Anything is called.
Victor Andrew, Andrea Bailey, Penny Bodie,
Here.
Margaret Franklin, here, Tom Gordy, Bob Weir, DeShondra Jefferson, Karen Mills, Idris O'Connor, Kim Burley Short, Yesley Vega, Tanisha Allen. I'll note that Ms. Allen is here, but she stepped out of the room. Oh, same here. There. Pamela Young.
Present.
Meg Bumpy, Daryl English, Ralph Smith.
Yeah.
Sonia Vasquez Luna. Daryl Moore.
Here.
Alana Mensing, Janet Holmes. Here. Will McIntosh, Deborah Frazier, Lori Hayes, Jacob Lane, Kevin Marshall, Tiffany Robinson, Todd Horsley, Rosia Henson Jr., Josh Thomas, Jeremy McPike.
Here.
Madam Vice Chair, we do have a forum. Thank you. Next, we need approval of the agenda.
So, second.
Moved by Mr. Bodie, seconded by Mr. Miller. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Next, the approval of the minutes for May 1st, 2025.
So moved, Madam Chair. Second.
Moved by Commissioner Bodie, seconded by Commissioner Pike. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Now we have the Virginia Railway Express Chief Executive Officer's time. Mr. Dalton.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. A couple things here real quick. First and foremost, I just want to make, if you're not already aware, just want to let everybody know that on Saturday, or this Saturday, less than 48 hours, the Manassas Rail Festival. Proud to participate in that once again this year. If you need any information, you can get information off of the city of Manassas website or go to BRE's website. It's always a great event. Don't worry about the weather or any of that kind of stuff. That's just get out there. We have our trains are covered, going to web. So anyway, just wanted to let everybody know about that. Real quick, just for the month of May, still showed consistent with the previous couple of months, some strong ridership. Based on 21 days of service, a little over unaudited, about 11,500 average daily riders. I just kind of going back a couple of years, not just a couple of years, it took us almost the entire calendar year to hit 1 million riders for the year. We've already done that for those 5 months this calendar year. So I think it's definitely a positive indication for us. That's my comments. You do have the CEO report in your package and everything there. So go ahead and take any questions, but also you can move on to the action items. Okay, so Vice Chair, just assuming that you want me to take them in a block, so I can do a summary of each item, and then you can vote the block. So just quickly, 6.2 is the title suggests we're seeking an authorization to execute an amendment with our contract for POS Rail Services Virginia for operating services. And essentially that amendment will do two things. One will amend the contract value to equal the fiscal year budget that's already been approved by the commissions. And then second, we'll extend that agreement one year, as mentioned in the package. That matches up with what will be the next item, but that matches up with the second agreement for mechanical services. And as you know, as most people know, we are resoliciting this this service, and we'll be coming back to this body later this year with some recommendations for that project. So that's 6.2, and I just kind of gave away 6.3. Similar, same idea. We're just simply amending that contract or that agreement to incorporate the fiscal year 26 budget that you've already approved. Moving on to 6.4, seeking authorization to execute a third amendment to the agreement with Amtrak for access and storage of Washington Union Station. This simply acknowledges or authorizes the next 5-year option period. And also within this agreement, as we've done in the past, it gives us an opportunity to just throw up some language in there. And also in this version, there is a schedule that we talked about before. We're transitioning our midday storage over the next 5-year period or whatever, or in that time frame to Seminary Yard. So that starts contemplating that. And of course, there's some substantial cost reduction with that move. 6.5, we're seeking to approve an amended and restated plan of delegation of authority for the operations board. Again, in the background here, this amendment is not necessarily changing. Well, it's not changing the approved delegation of authority. It's really just it's really clarifying a lot of things. As the background said, this last plan was adopted a couple of decades ago. Over time, we've found a need, particularly at the staff level, to ensure that we're clarifying certain things in this delegation of authority. As the background suggests, there are some certain areas as it deals with temporary construction easements or just temporary access easements over commission-owned property and stuff. Just making it clear where that authorization needs to come from. So that's 6.5, and that is the bundle, Madam Vice Chair. Taking questions.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve action items 6.2, 6.3, 6.4,
Full 65 compliant, please.
So we have 6.2, 6.3, 6.4. Moved by Commissioner Short and seconded by Commissioner Cloutier. Okay. All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's carried unanimously.
And I'm sure just the biggest fault of the system project to the original 2008 agreement. What are the that is codified whose responsibilities in terms of this board, which the BRE board in terms of land transfers and assets?
I'm sorry.
Land transfers.
Land transfers.
You're delegating authority under 6.5 as proposed, and that understands clarifying with clarifications sometimes have these some implications. So I want to, before we vote on this, fully understand what is this commission's responsibilities under the code and some of the question for the council, you in terms of like we're transferring and I think seriously when we have either land, real estate transfers, leasing, long-term obligations. How do we treat that?
So let me start by answering it this way. This amended and restated version does not necessarily give the operations board any authority to approve the sale and purchase of real assets. It doesn't necessarily, I don't believe, and Steve, you can jump in if you want. I don't believe it changes anything. I think I gave the example of the clarification. A good example of clarification. When there's property owned by the commissions, then, you know, in some cases, we're getting requests for, let's just say, an adjacent property owner, a utility or something like that. You know, to gain temporary access. So instead of bringing that all, and it's almost like we give them access, they just need access for a day or two. And instead of bringing that all the way to the commissions to do that, that's something from a clarification standpoint, we can give them that access. So that's a good example.
But so the fourth whereas essentially, as I read it, look to others to maybe help to clarify, is essentially the default consent agenda unless a commission member takes it and reads through and identifies this as an action for this board. And so I don't know how conveyances happen by consent automatically through an approving board without a vote. That's my principal question. And maybe this incepts policy of a threshold or a duration or time of the term of the contract, but I don't know how boards convey is full delegated authority without. I guess an appropriate whereas because it's essentially a default consent conveys of authority without limitation.
Okay, so if I'd be happy to response.
First of all, there is no delegation right of authorities to convey away property we receive. And that would be true of most easements. Similarly, these operation would not have to lease out property, step property. Application along the lines of real estate transaction related to instances where in the course of the capital project that of course the commissions have authorized and budget funds for, there may be an instance where, for instance, washing gas means that gas line is these costs, but sort of the facility or the convenient maybe electric need or something. Those granting that easement is something that under the plan of delegation, you're delegating the operation. Similarly, with a temporary construction easements, temporary access easements, whether we're conveying them to someone or receiving relation to that project. That would be something the operations do. Any real property, any personal property, equipment cannot be conveyed or received without the action by the commissions. You mentioned the idea of consent by commission after some actions. This was originally designed as sort of a fail-safe where I'm just going with delegation authority, whatever powers that can be to the operations board, delegated to the operations board, in the exercise of it, I should say, in anticipated exercise of that power. The commission should be alerted to what items are on the operations board agenda. And if if a commission member said, wait a minute, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that, or I don't read the plan of delegation be that way, they could actually pull it out to the commission. So, as Rich said, these are relatively minor, there's small nuances that have been greater with staff, and this was in fact clarified those areas.
I'm sure.
Yes.
So I've read sort of in word of English and under whereas three, read and said it was not clear whether the particular matter which was often simple, but time sensitive, primarily involving agreements with real estate matters, incidental to approval, capital improvement projects, temporary construction, stormwater pond maintenance, agreements required commission action or approved. Who determines what is the time sensitive? I mean, for instance, could one have a takings action, which is a fairly heavy hand of the government under this whereas, as I read the resolution clauses, there's a wide range of whether franchise agreement, whether lease, whether takings, or other actions that I'm just asking the fundamental questions as read. It is not clear to me what authority or understanding that this commission understands the full understanding of what is delegated about this resolution.
Again, if I can respond. The resolution is designed to help some was plan of delegation fairly it's very clear. I'm not asking what things the operation authority is here, what things are retained by the commission. In fact, even under the commission retained powers, it says any power not expressly delegated retained by the commissions. The only real estate matters that have been committed to the active on was commit on the outsourced power, like you said. Simplistic maybe not the right word, but they were exactly designed to ensure that site plan approval, for instance, process or construction of a facility that required stormwater prevention. There were always easements, access easements to the local government, as well as maintenance with the local government. Those are fairly routine. Going through the operations board to the conditions for action would delay that site plan approval process by months. So the desire was to just send it like that. This actually clarifies that. Similarly, with like an easement being granted to like Washington Gas, would like you to get power to a facility that's being built. Seem simplistic, and again, they can affect the critical path of the project. But again, your wise point is, I'm sorry, just say eminent domain. No way. I mean, that's absolutely required of the commission to before any such action.
Madam Chair, for purpose of clarity, and it seems like there's a couple of things. If there are easements or transfers in public entity, there's probably one classification that has a little bit ease of burden. I think this, if there are transfers of value or takings from private entity, that's typical. This resolution doesn't have to. I'd be more comfortable having a lot more specificity before this resolution is adopted. And Madam Chair, to follow up, I get the ease of wanting to expedite projects. We've got the one bridge, the full track, a lot of other elements that are going to be happening over the next couple of years. And I support that, but as written under this resolution, I'm not clear if the commission is fully aware as written, and that's all we have to act on tonight is what is written, not the verbal statements provided, but what is written, what the word is delegated. So I would not be comfortable with casting this as apologize. I didn't have a chance to follow up with you falling up on the docket and show up in the pants, so it's not my gotcha. And so if there's a way to provide that code to the commission, why the exact order you're allocating? Like I said, there's pretty nuanced law in terms of franchise agreements and other things that we should probably consider. And that had value that needed to be bifurcated from this resolution for IB.
Sure.
Thank you, advice. Sultan, appreciate the conference, appreciate your presentation. Sort of dovetail on Commissioner White's the concerns here. I'm looking through the actual VTC memo that is the actual stated plan. And it's a little more granular than the resolution, but not a lot. So, for example, going off what Commissioner Pike said, approval of temporary and permanent easements on commission-owned property that are necessary for VRE facilities. And approval of temporary and permanent easements conveyed to the commission by third parties necessary for VRE facilities. That's a pretty broad stroke kind of thing. So to the point, who are the third parties? Is that private property owned by other folks? Is that public property owned by other agencies? You know, other government entities, especially in an area like Northern Virginia, there's a whole cross cut of a bunch of different agencies and localities and entities that own land. So again, there's more granularity in this part of it, but it's still, there's very broad sweeping things. So if we get clarity on that, I think that would be helpful.
So am I hearing a motion that will.
Let's
Second.
Well, I guess before we defer, maybe I should have said this before, but does this impact if we do defer? I mean, we're not on a particular time frame for updating England this, I'm assuming.
Time frame, no.
So we can just do this.
I mean, we can take your feedback. And frankly, I guess. Yeah, I'm just trying to think of in calendar time frame, we can bring it back to July.
Sure. And then I may have missed this discussion at the VRE, but what was the feedback at VRE on this? Was there any discussion?
Just some general discussion, but not, just some general discussion.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have a motion by Senator Pike and a second by Commissioner Bodie to defer item 6.5. The approval to approve the amended and restated plan of delegation of authority to the Virginia Railways for subdivision.
No question. Do we have enough? Do you have enough information? What we need to unpack and add to this document?
Around one point of clarity, there was a distinction made between conveyances, easements on mission, public and private. Public utilities would be included in public entities. Very unusual for us to convey to private limited commission property. And I understand that if private property owners are concerned, then when we have a temporary construction, for instance, for grading or access to private property owners adjacent to one of our sites, you don't feel comfortable conveying that to operation. Those are 2 points to fire.
That's fair. It kind of clarify, I mean, there's some in constitutional grounds as well as case law, which are probably important distinctions in terms of conveyance of public franchise agreements and then public transfers. If you go through, you see a higher degree of requirement for public quality when it deals with public to private takings or transfers of public hearings versus public to public. I would like to see that distinction in the policy and resolution as distinguished. I think it does require a little bit of a higher bar in engagement. And so I'd like to make sure that it conforms to sort of the principles and a power and constitutional law through some case law and there's well. This is interesting, more interesting, I think, franchise case law in the last 7 years as well. Maybe of interest.
We have a motion and a second to defer 6.5. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstention. Motion is approved. 6.6. BRE information. Please.
Okay, thank you very much. So we do have some 6.6 points, several information items. Do want to elevate one item, which we have over the course of several months, been given some updates at the operations board level of our system plan 2050. There is a presentation that's in your packet, but what we're gonna do here is just want to run you through a couple of things, just again to lift some information up. Essentially, it's ridership, some financial things, or some financial information, and there's some other detail in there. And these are just getting feedback from different commission members at both NBTC and PRTC. Because we are on a pace, we're going to come later this month to the operations board and actually trying to form this into something that the commissions would adopt. So if you just bear with us here, 5-10 minutes, want to run through a couple of pieces of information. Want to definitely open this up. If you get thinking about it, you want to communicate with myself directly, have discussions, and get further clarity. Glad to set those up with you. But again, and I'm going to be showing this later at NBTC, and some of this stuff came specifically from NBTC commission members. And what I prefer to do is show you the same thing I'm going to show the other commission. So with that, actually have control. I've got most of you know Nick Ruiz, who is our planning program manager. He's going to run through these slides again. Glad to take questions and stuff like that, but also glad to set up some one-on-ones and have even additional conversation. With that, Nick, thank you. We have a working clicker.
All right, very good. Evening board. So we'll dive right in. We've got about 5-10 minutes, as Rick said. What just at a high level, what we the operations board will be asking commissions to adopt. That comes to you all later this summer for action, is our 2050 system plan. And that's comprised of two main components. It's a 2030 service plan and a 2050 service vision. Components to those two 2030 and 2050 visions are financial and service concepts, as well as identification of the capital needs to be able to implement that. I just want to point something out here, and I'll reiterate it later in this presentation, that adoption of the plan is not a commitment by this body or other bodies to fund or to implement the improvements that are proposed in the plan. The plan is not a budget, excuse me. Commission would still need approval, would still need to grant approval to specific service implementation elements as the plan progresses between now and horizon year. And so I'm going to be talking a little bit about ridership forecasts here at a very high level. I'll breeze through this slide, but the takeaway here is that all of the ridership forecasts that you'll see in the final plan materials were developed with the help of MWCOG's trial demand model, and that model in part relies on land use assumptions that are provided from each and every jurisdiction in the region. That feed basically the model output. So that gets down to the very specific level of what's the residential density, what's the projected growth of population and employment around VOE stations to predict when and where growth in the ridership might occur. So getting onto the ridership estimates here, for 2030, what the plan is going to show is that implementation of the 2030 service improvements will net VRE over 15,000 average daily weekday rides. So the comparison to that is the no build at 13,000 average daily rides. So you're seeing roughly a 2,000 ADR bump as a result of adding that 63% additional level of service. On the weekend, I mean, that's really where we're projecting to see the largest growth on both Saturdays and on Sundays. Obviously, today we don't run any weekend service. The concept of operations would be to start with a limited Saturday schedule. That's something that's already programmed into the existing PRV budget. This year, excuse me, moving to a full Saturday and Sunday schedule, and then eventually a 26 daily train schedule. But moving on to 2050 here, looking at the build alternative, netting VRE over 28,000 average daily weekday rides. You can see the breakdowns there between Fredericksburg and Massa's line. And that's roughly 6,000 ADR higher than if we were to do nothing and allow the system to grow naturally. I will point out though, you'll see the 22,600 some number on the left in the no build. That would represent a very constrained system. Prior to the pandemic, when we were doing about 18,000, 19,000 average daily rides, it was on many trains every seat taken. So that's a little bit of a false number because likely there would not be the available capacity to support that level of demand. And then on to the weekend here for 2050, really looking at the growth from 2030 to 2050 because we quadrupling again the level of weekend service. And just as a point of comparison, so on Fredericksburg line on Saturday, that's the farthest level. That's not that much less than what we were carrying on our system just prior to the federal return to office directives. So it just shows just how much latent demand that there is likely to be in the next 25 years. So just a comparison of the service frequencies between the existing adopted plan, which is our plan 2040, and the proposed system plan 2050. Nothing terribly radically different. But there are some notable differences in the number of daily trains, and that's simply because we're proposing a slightly longer span of service, as well as to beef up our reverse direction service in the peaks. What that does is allow VRE to better cycle equipment. It lessens our capital needs for rolling stock, and gets those trains back out on the railroad, moving and serving customers back. I want to reiterate again, I mentioned at the top of the presentation, but the system plan is not a budget. So when this action item comes before the commissions, like this is not a commitment to fund or to implement any one element of the plan. But we absolutely see this as a guidepost for seeking additional funding and support, whether it's through the ongoing SJ 28 process at state level or other channels to help us achieve the vision. And I just want to note too, when we talk about the 2030 and the 2050 vision separately, the 2030 service plan really was designed to respond to the capital projects that are already programmed and largely funded in concert with the transforming ground vision. So that's your long bridge, that's your fourth track, station expansion projects, parking expansion projects. There is a small need for additional rolling stock by 2030 before we get into a much larger state of good repair expansion program. But really, that 2030 service plan is constrained to the infrastructure that VRE knows it will be on the ground. So moving on to the operating funding outlook here. So in 2030, with the build alternative, we're projecting that annual expenditures to operate the service will be just north of $200 million. That's up from the no build and 2030 of $135.9 million. And you can see at the bottom of these bars, the gap between what we expect to have to pay to operate the service and the revenues we expect to be bringing in that fiscal year. So the gap does grow by 9 to 3%. I just want to point out though that we expect there to be a gap in revenues, even if we did not. So final slide here to wrap things up. After this meeting, we will be, as Rick mentioned, we'll be going up to PRTC to make the identical presentation. We hope to bring or to have the operations board recommend to the commissions to adopt July meetings, and then later this summer, VRE staff will be updating the relevant planning documents, making sure that everything aligns. The public facing documents are all aligned, and then hopefully every year we would maintain the plan, with updates based on updated ridership figures, financial figures, value and that sort of thing. And we anticipated that would happen around about the time that the VRE budget should be prepared in late fall. So with that, I conclude the presentation, happy to take any questions or further material, Rich or others.
Commissioner Rugged. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Reese, for the presentation. I'm looking at the presentations in our package, which is a summary, I think, that you gave all to the VRE board. And you have a feedback summary matrix. I think it's maybe the third or fourth slide down, where you say you have checkbox of who you talk to, get feedback, and that's all makes sense. But my question is, it looks like you talked to the transportation staff for all the member jurisdictions. Was there interactivity there with the planning step to see, the comprehensive plans, the targeted density, or the areas around the VRA stations? In Prince William County, for example, we have Potomac Shores that's going to blow up and have a VRA station there. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely, yes, we absolutely did consult with and meet several times, especially Prince William County. We did have about, say, 2 or 3 meetings with county staff. We asked relatively open-ended questions. Okay, so here's our proposed service vision. Tell us about the plans the county has, with the station area. We had very good conversations. Generally speaking, nothing that our service plan proposes is out of alignment with.
Appreciate that. And my second question is, you have a really good slide later on. They're not numbers, so I don't know exactly how far it is, so like maybe 8 or 9, 7 or 8. It compares the system plan 2040 with the system plan 2050 update. And a lot of good expanded hours there. Really appreciate that. I know we talk about that all the time. But there's sort of 2 near the end where it talks about the system plan update, the peak period, reverse direction, PM. It goes from 3 o'clock until 6:30, and it says the late night last train southbound is 10:05 for the Fredericksburg line and 9:55 for the Manassas line. Am I misreading, or is there almost a 3.5 hour gap between that last train and then the late night train?
Oh, yeah, no, so that I know exactly the line is referring to in that table, and so that's just a representation of how much longer into the evening that service span would go. The 2050 vision would essentially have a more regular, we call it flat phase schedule, after the peaks. It drop down to a lower level of service, but then continue out to that 10 o'clock.
I appreciate it. Like I said, based on how it reads, it sort of could be misconstrued thing. Oh, well, if you don't miss that 6:30 train, you're screwed for another 2.5 hours stuck in DC. So I just wanted to make sure. But it's not right. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yes, I just love.
That concludes my report.
I'm sorry. Sure.
Yeah, just following up on Potomac Shores station, when it's a little bit like projected station progress construction.
Before you answer, we need to put in context that the developers are actually developing the station as opposed to VRE, but because of some challenges, we've made sure that VRE is now part of those intimate discussions.
So with that, if there's still a couple of major steps that need to align, but what I'm being told is that potentially there could be some construction starting on the station itself. I'll back up. The parking garage and access from the garage, as far as they can take it to the station, is just about to get wrapped up. So that part's already done. So let's just say if construction starts by the end of the calendar year, it's about an 18-month cycle is what they're looking at. So halfway through 27 moves. But I don't know, Commissioner Franklin, if you guys are hearing anything different, but
No, I think that's right. We broke ground on the garage in the town center, which basically helps to lead the way for the rest of the train station development just because of the easements and where it's located. Some of the challenges that we still face is just with documentation with CSX. That's been a persistent challenge throughout this process. On the county side, we've kind of pushed forward with the permits and things of that nature. They've done all the soil mitigation work or the environmental work on the soil. So it's really CSX that we're still kind of working with, I should say, to move some of the paperwork forward.
Well, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. Everybody stay safe.
Thank you. Now it's public comment time. Speakers in 3 minutes, you must state your name, your jurisdiction, and the group you represent, if any. We have comments submitted online. No comments were submitted online. Is there anybody here who would like to speak?
I was gonna speak tonight, but the concerns I want to bring up have nothing to do with VRE, so I'll hold off on I'll hold off on that for the next meeting.
It's the PRTC meeting, it is the Omni-Ride meeting,
Got it.
we also hear about PRE this window.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna stand up. Hey everyone, my name is Nathan Lawson. I have been taking Omni Ride as a project for the past almost 2 years now. I talked with Mr.
Would you please tell us your jurisdiction?
Yes, ma'am. I'm in Woodbridge in Prince William County.
Okay, and if you represent a group.
I do not currently, no.
Okay.
I'm working on that though. I'm in the process of getting in politics. I'm meeting my party in the next week and a half. So I'm nervous. I'm sorry. I'm not yet in public speaking, but I've been here for 3 years in Virginia. I'm originally from Florida. And I have been without a car for the past few years, and so therefore I've had to rely on OmniRide to get around. I originally started out taking the bus services, and I noticed that there has been a lot of issues with buses showing up on time. There have been times where I've called the front office here, usually 2 or 3 days in advance of, let's say, a job interview or employment application. I would talk to someone who would tell me this is what route would you take. These are the hours you need to leave and when you can expect to be back. And I always make sure to do my part and plan ahead. Problem is, every time I would go to set appointments, I would leave 2 to 3 hours early. And I would still be late. I had a job interview at Wegmans. 10-minute car ride. I left 2 hours early. They still had me 30 minutes late to that job interview. And because of it, I did not get the job. Shortly after, I got signed up with the paratransit services. And it was even worse. I would, again, do my part, plan my trips ahead. A lot of times I would book a trip 2 to 3 days in advance. And when my pickup time would arrive, it would usually be around 30 minutes or so before the app is even assigning me a trip. You're going to be picked up. I've lost several job opportunities due to OmniRide being late. This is an issue that needs to be addressed. One last issue that I want to bring up is that I brought it to drivers for the past 2 to 3 months now. Usually when I'm taking a paratransit van, I'm getting a burning smell that's coming in through the vents, which tells me that I know a little bit about cars, which tells me that these oil changes are not being done on these vehicles. These vehicles are not being properly maintained. I'm honestly shocked that some of these vans are still running. So when I did my research and I found out that there was a public hearing, I had heard something about you guys were looking at raising funding for OmniRide. So my question is if you guys can't even handle, I wouldn't say handle, that's probably the wrong word, but if you guys can't even maintain your current workload, or if you can't even maintain your vehicles, why do we need to raise funding for all you? Those are concerns I've been dealing with for 2 years. I've said something, I've brought this up multiple times, multiple supervisors, and nothing is being. At least I personally have not seen it. I can't say that nothing's being done, I haven't seen it. And so, those are just a couple issues that I wanted to bring before the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson. Dr. Follow up. Get back to us next week.
Of course.
We get Mr. Lawson.
Here, this one. Joe. Should I come around and write it down? Or-
No, we have your leadership.
Very good, okay. All right, thank you. Thank you for your time, I appreciate it, of course.
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Robinson, and I'm out of the Woodbridge jurisdiction. And I've been on the ride for, wow, well, almost 2 decades now. Make it quick, in 2018, I fell down and I was in the hospital for bedridden for 5 months, nursing home for 7 months. So through the grace of God, I went from being bedridden to a wheelchair, a walker to a cane. So my therapist has me now on and off with the cane. And ever since you guys came up with paratransit, that has benefited me tremendously. I have been able to receive my certificate of training with the Chris Atwood Foundation peer recovery support, with the help of you guys in your transportation. Okay, I've also now under George Mason University internship, peer recovery specialist, helping you guys pick me up on time and getting me home. So this is my first board meeting I've been here, and I just want to say thank you. Because with the app, with the paratransit transportation, and I know most of the drivers who've come and gone for the buses, and I see them regularly, and I just wanted to stop by and say thank you for the help, because there was paratransit started up. My Keisha, just no, okay. Well, she's been doing a great job. Okay, so y'all can tell that John Robinson said she's been doing an awesome job, and I mean, now I'm working in the community for being a peer recovery specialist. And I'm just by, well, for you guys help, they see me and they ask, well, how did you get that? But see, they don't know my history, my background, because I don't wear it on my chest, because I stay positive. You know, being in that condition, I've learned how to be humble and positive and supportive of this opportunity that we have to take this transportation like this. So I applaud you guys, and just keep up the good work, because I need you. Okay? And I'm out of here. Time to go to bed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. All right, next we have the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to?
Second. Rescind.
Moved by Commissioner Adams,
The opposite, right? And
seconded by, I'm gonna say Mr. Moore.
yes, sure.
He also said.
I just.
You said.
Someplace.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Consent agenda passes. Alright, so we have the executive directors.
Yes, I've got a couple of items that I wanted to bring closure on from previous meeting. Firstly, if everyone's been briefed on the WMATA issue already with fare recovery, but Phil's going to give a brief slide on that just to remedy sake to let you know the issue. Because all the funds are collected, et cetera.
Yeah.
Yeah,
issue to solve, fun. First of all, I just want to thank everybody for the time that they were able to give for this issue. We met with a lot of folks and really tried, it's a nuanced issue, and so, from the executive committee giving, multiple meetings as well as meeting with individual commissioners. I know Bob and I spoke, we both very much appreciate the opportunity to have those discussions and to help build the understanding of this issue. So I'm gonna kind of go through it relatively quickly because I think everybody's been brief. But if you recall, there was an issue with fare revenues earned in our western facility. WMATA runs the regional smart trip program, and when we brought the western facility online, they basically did not, for lack of a better way, click a button, code the thing appropriately to make sure that the revenues flowed through to OmniRide for just that facility. We also wanted to make sure it was clear the jurisdictional subsidy was not impacted. Our budget requested jurisdictions were not impacted. The operating grants that we received from the states that were required to credit back these fares, they were not impacted. We did all those things that were all appropriately handled. What was impacted was our operating cash account, and that is basically, your working capital, as we should call it, and that started to reduce. However, we do have a policy here that we're required to have at least 3 months of operating expenses reserved, and throughout this process, we never went below 4 months of reserve. We typically live and operate at best practices in the just over 5 months of reserve is where we've been for the better part of the decade, but safe this whole time period here. At this point, PRTC has been fully reimbursed at $4.5 million total. The issue is closed. WMATA has fixed the problem. And I also wanted to mention, we spoke with our auditors. They came in and actually spoke with the executive committee as well. This is an immaterial issue. So this is something that will just be reported as revenue this year. The dollar amounts and the significance of it over the time period is not something that drew to the level where our auditors would make a comment or a finding or anything of that nature. So, we cross that bridge with them, which is obviously something that we can have here. Very quickly getting into the timeline, just, this was when the facility opened, it was also that the time when most severe and initial COVID lockdowns were being released, if you will. And so our ridership was booming. We were doubling ridership and revenue was going up, quite a bit as well. At the same time, we were introducing the services out here. We had a lot of changes, up and down in our service. And like I said, the system-wide ridership and revenue was really growing in that first initial post-COVID phase. But what happened was that we budgeted a fare increase, and really that was not meeting expectations, and that was something that caused us to investigate this issue. We initially looked at our planning assumptions. Did we think about ridership the right way or not? Did we make a mistake there? We went back and looked at all our operating grants. Did we make a mistake in how we did that? We realized we didn't. But this past September, we identified that it really was a WMATA issue, and we began working with them on that. It wasn't until March when we received the first $1.3 million payment where we were sort of, okay, they've now confirmed this issue. We get nothing in writing, no really formal correspondence until this payment was received. So that was when we felt, okay, they've acknowledged that this is an issue on their end. We then worked with them further to get the remaining $3.2 million. The reason for the two payments is that the $1.3 million represented the current fiscal year. It was relatively easy for WMATA to just do. And then the 3.2 represented all the prior years, which required them to just be certain on their end and do some additional back work, which we went back and forth. Other important thing we want to make sure we mention here is what changes have we made so we don't get into this situation. And things will happen. There's always going to be things that happen, but the idea is to hopefully catch them much sooner in the future. So a couple things. WMATA has instituted the change request form. When the regional partners are looking to change services, adjust things, whatever the case may be, we're now required to submit a form to them, where previously we were not required to do that. That said, that's still in WMATA's control and doesn't provide us too many guarantees. So one of the things that we wanted to do to add on to that is bring up a quarterly meeting with the regional settlement folks and just basically talk through, we'll look through the numbers on our side, have a quick discussion with them and make sure, that we're all seeing the same things and that everything lines up with what our expectation will be. It's just a forced touch point for all of us. And also wanted to, talk about, we have a monthly close process now. We're issuing management level reporting. We're looking into this information. That was really, something that was not a result of this, but something that we were doing that helped us to uncover this issue and work through this issue. And then, the last piece of this is that, Bob has noted, was worried about this, if you will, and said, something wasn't adding up. We were all talking about it. And so, as part of his goals for this year, he did include this. A revenue dashboard to be included in our current ridership dashboard for this fiscal year. We're actually finalizing that now. With this issue resolved, we're able to then, bring this to production, and we'll be reporting revenue up through customer revenue through the commission on a regular basis. Again, just some additional visibility on this issue. And that summarizes this. If there's any questions, please, I'm happy to take them. Quick question.
I'm sorry,
Sorry.
I'm gonna let Commissioner.
Question. I'm gonna talk about, some change. Related to the best practice policy. We spoke with about the understand. It's now the good time for us to mention adjusting that, but wait until the budgetary process starts, so maybe. I think what budget committee.
So I think that would be the appropriate avenue, because what we anticipate doing it, and actually I have a budget presentation today too, so we'll get into some of this will cross in some ways in that, we will have a budget committee again, which is, I think, frankly, in the, I'm mistaken with the executive committee, but I'm not. Maybe there was a budget. Okay, so perhaps I might have been mistaken that, but there was a budget committee for this last budget cycle. We intend to utilize that again. I think that'd be a great initial group to have those first discussions with, and then to make something out of that committee for whatever changes. So, we will have to we can just discuss it at that point there, but certainly we want your feedback at that point as well. And anybody else.
What else?
Appreciate it, some of the follow-up, I guess, until some of the presentation, but what I feel is that there's still the accountability perspectives that are not being communicated here, which are really important. The public as an agency and commission, and if we're missing 4.5 million, I want to understand solidly, not an immaterial auditor's finding, that's a technical. It's a technical term for what you're showing in the books. The fact is, when you're not showing, you should be tracking on something with those is a problem. And so I appreciate the update. I didn't feel like this presentation had accountability to it. That we are digging into all funding revenue sources. And I just felt like this was placing a lot of us taking our responsibility and ask for what we becoming having 4.5 million coming in the house. So I know there's been a lot of work on this, but I don't think that this is a very good conclusion to this issue from a long-term management perspective on this. That's a problem.
Jim. So my comments were noted. The discussion that we had about the labor point is similar to what Senator White is talking about, the accountability section, that we need to have things in place that to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And we understand that fundings, but at the same time, we need to have certain things in place that audited as money is moving what it is to do. I just wanted to share that. I appreciate it.
May I comment on that?
Yeah, I thought we talked about that, and there were several things that we could implement with breast care.
Yeah, and I do apologize if this seems to be too brief. We thought there was going to be quite a bit of discussion, and so I apologize if I did that incorrectly. Certainly not trying to do that other than to pose. But what I will say is that I would agree. I can't say that nothing is ever going to happen, but I do want to have systems in place that help us find these things, because things do happen. So for me, what I would lean heavily on mostly is the institution of monthly processes and management. That we all, as an organization, internally look at that information. We distribute that information out of finance, and we all talk about that, and we look for issues, and the ideas and that come from anything. So from my perspective, and I'm open to any other suggestions, instituting those sorts of processes, which gets the information into many people's hands in the organization, and they're able to look at the areas that they are that they work in, where they spend or where they're responsible for, and understand what's going on and communicate that. I do think that's a big piece. I also think including this in a dashboard that comes to the commission helps with the visibility, so we can all be looking at it in that way too. But I'm absolutely open to any other suggestions that may come out of that. If we want anything else that we've been looking to do to create the service that all we have, certainly. Those ideas.
Yeah, thank you for that, and thank you all for, kind of getting this, resolved. Getting it resolved, I was gonna say rather quickly, so you guys have kind of been dealing with this for a couple of years, but, one thing I will say, I know we're going to punt it to the budget committee, but I think, during that conversation, we should, I think to Senator McPike's point, figure out how, whatever that fair recovery from WMATA looks like, that it's kind of, in plain sight, in terms of our actual budget. And forgive me if it already is, but it's just something we've never really talked about, because I think on you all's end, it's so administrative. But just to make sure that, we're not missing this again. And just because we're all kind of on alarm to make sure, I mean, 4 million.
It's not nothing.
Yeah, especially with all the challenges we've gone, through with COVID and kind of coming out of COVID. I think it would make sense, at least for the next few years, or maybe for the foreseeable future, to make sure that we can actually see that on the balance sheets in some way.
Sure, but if I could respond very quickly, moving to the budget, there is a fair line. It is lumped together based on what gets sort of credited locally versus what comes from Vermont, because it's not grants. You can absolutely look at that separately and talk about those differently, and they will be reported up in that dashboard and separate dashes. So that's already.
Yes. Just a quick question as to, where did the money go over to? Where did?
Right now, it's
in the reserve?
Yes, we put it back into the operating account. And that was, so what's happened is we've been basically living at just over 5 months of reserve. This brought us down into just over 4 months of reserve over this period of time. Crediting the funds back to that reserve will bring us back up over the 5 months of reserve, which is about where you again, was spent for most of the past decade.
Sure.
Yeah, I think listening to some of the concerns and suggestions, I think the issue is that, which is what I was looking at, and it'll come in the budget, is the reason why the issue is not so much what our auditors didn't catch or whatnot. We're actually using practices that our levers are not even being tested. So in some ways, because we're going above and beyond what our system is being tested for during the audit process, that's how it was taught versus us setting standards. So we have to move towards the standard and have established practices and policy that meet what we're actually doing, so that you do get stuff like that, if that makes sense. So that's one of the suggestions that hopefully will come back during the budgetary process. The main is aligning best practices to what our policy should be, so that when we test our leverage again, that's nothing, that's things like that.
Absolutely, and what I would say is that a hard monthly close, distributing financial reporting is really the paramount to those best practices, and so that's something that's been very close.
Well, I'm sorry about that. During our conversation, that was something that would not be able to catch at that point in time.
Previously,
Okay.
That's not, I'd love to be very honest, Phil's arrival at the organization has been, we did not have a monthly close, as a matter of fact, there were points we didn't have a yearly close going on. So it was just a tightening of accountability has been evolutionary, it has been macro evolutionary with Phil's arrival. And now that we are actually able to have a monthly close, we know where we are month to month, fair collection, fair identification. We typically wouldn't find out what our prayers would be until almost the auditors would know. This has changed and it is a much different organization. It's the budget fund for
And the other comment I said was that we didn't know, I'm sorry that we don't know what we don't know. That was the other comment that I had. So to find out what we don't know, because you could put processes in place now. But is this everything that you need to know in order to have total control of the process?
Realistically, we will never have all of it, and the reason we'll never have all of it is because we don't have the control. The best example that I can use, there's a parallel to this that happened in 2017 and 2018 when the gas pumps opened at the Walmart on Liberia Avenue. One side of the street is Manassas City, one side of the street is Prince William County. When those gas pumps opened, the state, Department of Motor Vehicles actually identified those as being inside of Manassas City.
Yeah.
So it took, we didn't know because the rates we brought in were tied to the actual index of gasoline. And it was a small dollar amount overall, but over the course of a year, 18 months, we realized that Manassas City's dollar amount was growing. It's us watching the trends that allows us to identify what occurs. The early stages, when we opened up the Western facility, we only had a handful of buses running out of there. And the toll lanes weren't open yet. We didn't have a lot of grant funded services. We had very little ridership. So the things that would draw attention to that weren't there. It was camouflage. Well, then once the toll lanes opened up, we saw the ridership explosion really start in 2023, and then of course the return to work. That October 2024, we had massive ridership growth. Those are all the things that kept drawing our attention to it. And we as a staff were identifying last year our budget process. We have, we don't know why we're not hitting our budget targets. That's why we did fare increases. We were estimating, trying to identify what those things were. Again, it's never hit the budget line items or the budget request. That was a separate item. But what we saw was, especially once ridership took off, it began to lower that dollar amount of the operating cash. And that was the genuine real trigger. We could then identify fare collection. We increased fares. We should have seen, knowing what our ridership was, a 1-to-1 month to month. That was how we absolutely knew it was in the WMATA, but it took them months to get compliance.
Sure. Yeah, just want to make sure I'm clear. We are now doing the reconciliation month from.
Absolutely.
That's good purpose.
Thank you, Mr. Pratt.
Next follow-up item, get all that news out of the way, I guess, in a way. We did the bus fire investigation. If you recall, there was an incident on March 4th. It was at the I-95 mile marker 155. Bus 3005, there's a report at your desk, at your seat. There's an executive summary. But what this boils down to, it was human error. That was the root cause. And it was a failure to follow standard operating procedures, which resulted in the operator being instructed to drive the vehicle. With a flat tire, you don't drive the vehicle. A maintenance technician pictures were sent in that it looks like it'll be fine. Go ahead and drive it from Spotsylvania up here. That should not have happened because then the tire ended up separating, got wrapped around the axle at high speeds. It just creates massive friction heat. And then when it hit traffic in the Dale City area, now oxygen is consistently fed and it went up in flames. So that's what happens frequently when you see truck fires. That is what is occurring. The truck was lost in fire, the rubber's wrapped around the axle. They don't know it because they have dual tire axle systems, so you just don't feel it at the rear, which is where it occurred. And that was what ended up causing the fire. So it took us longer to get through the investigation information because we tried to do the video recorder was damaged, so we tried to get the video recorder viewable. It was not. So we worked extensively with the company to try to do that because that would give us a lot more information in terms of the timeline of events. Next slide, please. And so we have recommendations and next steps. These have all already been completed. This was completed at the very first of May. This is our first meeting since we got the final report. Staff retraining went through the entire maintenance department. Keolis brought in their corporate team to help review SOPs and procedures. They've revised and clarified those. We've enhanced communication. We took Keolis's report and conducted ours separately and independently. So Fire conducted interviews, make sure that the claims that Keolis said they had done did happen. Yes, they did retrain. Fire was able to validate, verify. And then we have ongoing monitoring, and this is just part of something as part of the regular safety training meetings. And all dispatchers and supervisors go in specialized training on how to deal with on-road vehicle failures. So with that, any questions? The final item I did want to mention, I apologize, is Keolis will be reimbursing us for the cost of the bus as part of that process.
Okay, because I'm about to ask that, I'm like, that's a serious unit, like, why would you think you can drive how many exits and flat? But that's insane.
Yeah,
Like, just know about a lot of check and training that you could tell to me, your judgment is questioned right away. Do you think we could drive, what, 5 exits, 6 exits on 95?
Next item, just the data security event, it very brief interim update. As we've discussed previously, there was a data breach on December 11th. Letters were mailed to those with potential data exposure. To be clear, it's potential data. The example that has been given is once the door opens, you can assume that everything inside that room is touched. So we don't, there's no guarantees of what was or wasn't. However, this is still a confidential investigation. However, the letters to those who were potential, had potential sensitive data obtained was sent out. With that, we want to provide this update. That is the only update we are authorized to provide the legal counsel. Any questions we can answer, we can only answer if they're basically in the content of the letter, because we are still under the guidance from the legal firm that we're working through with first. They are still guiding and directing the ongoing investigation. But I just wanted to let you know that the letters did go out. We are still working with them in the process. Hope to have something more to you by fall, but that's an open-ended statement on their end, and that's, I think, about the max later that we've been authorized to discuss in open session.
Questions? Okay, so it's not to do with the letters, more so, I mean, because of the sensitivity of the subject, I'm curious to find out if we're gonna do some type of, and maybe the commission has signed up, but some type of IT auditing for our system, because I'm like, what are we using as an agency or connection to make sure that the level of security and technicality prevents us, because the way I look at it is like some of our most vulnerable people in our community utilize our services, and so not many people have access to programs or opportunities to protect their information based on the laws, so that to me is like, okay, as a commission, is it something that we should be doing to make sure that our IT services and our security is beefed up to the best possible, and if not, then we come through, but to
What I think I can say at this point is that I do believe when this whole process ends up, with the legal firm, they will have some recommended actions that will be taken as well. And then the other thing is that, without getting too specific, I don't think we conduct customer transactions here. I can't say certainly one way or other on anything, but I think without conducting those transactions, I think that does help a little bit of the line between the public that we serve, and perhaps we got a lot more to figure out. And frankly, they told us we know nothing other than, hey, the letters are going out, and then they're gathering information, and then they owe us a follow-up that's probably in the case.
I mean, my concern, I get that, but my concern is just understanding how the various those people tend to be, and if we may not have, but they can attach things the way that they can make it submit that may be able to get back towards it, second stuff, so that's just my.
And I will add that just separate that we do have a monitoring service that we have assisting with us with this incident, and they are continuously monitoring our system at all 24/7. So as part of this right now.
Yeah. But I think.
No, sorry. Or answers like. Yeah, I had a question about, maybe not going into the detail of the letter, but are we offering any services to those people that are impacted by the potential data exposure? Like Experian or one of the other services?
Yes.
So they can check their credit?
Yes, we're required, each state has specific laws. And so that is one of the advantages of having this firm guide us through this process, is they are the experts. And so they have really been able to identify in different states. Most states conform to a general federal standard, but some states have some additional specific provisions, and those residents have been, it's called out in the specific letter that, and if you've got one of those data breach letters.
I have, but not for this.
Not for this, but it's.
I've got another one.
It is basically the same letter, that if you've got one, that we're, I just figured out I was gonna do it. It looks like copy. Yeah, and that's just why I was like, if you've gotten a letter, you know exactly what it looks like. Yes.
Okay.
No, nothing further on that. Next. Get into some ridership updates. Second. There's a slide, the graph on it, but I'm not talking about that quite yet. Average daily ridership for commuter bus service decreased a little bit, about 10% from April. We are hitting that May window where we start to see more vacations, activity, Memorial Day, all those kinds of things. We usually see a dip in April. So, you know, so that started with spring break. We had a really great March, April, but ridership was still fantastic from the standpoint of people riding every day. We are hitting that beginning of the summer seasonal adjustment, which is one of the reasons we didn't try to go out and throw a whole lot of service in our service change that occurred at late April, knowing we would see the decline for summer. We will be watching it very closely throughout summer, just to ensure that we have a really good sense of what we can expect come August, September. Not that we have resources to do a whole lot, but at least we can know what we can expect. Lake Ridge, Pentagon, DC route, 981 ridership has doubled since January, which is assisted by the new trips that we added in April. The Western routes doing unbelievably well, over 40,000 monthly riders between the 3 routes that operate at the university lot alone. The 5 southern routes out of Stafford, Fredericksburg, and Spotsylvania have over 30,000 monthly passengers. So strong growth in those 2 areas, and all other routes in the systems are still performing very well, even though they had a slight taper. Local ridership, top 3 eastern routes are Route 53 Dumfries Connector, Route 91 Dale City, and 52 Woodbridge. We have about 5% unofficial ridership slip, about 5% tied to the holidays. So we can definitely identify that. Rainy weather also had these usual impacts. The Western local services carried about 7,000 passengers, and the Route 60 Manassas Tysons had just under 10,000. 2 years ago, those were 5,000 passengers, so we are instantly seeing growth. Overcrowding is declining, and as you can see on this chart, a couple of things. What it shows is back in October, we already had overcrowding issues over on because we did the service reduction last summer. So that ended up creating overcrowding on the 611 and 612 routes from the university lot to Pentagon and university to DC. As we've added a couple of trips in December, and we added more trips in April, the overcrowding has alleviated there. However, we are seeing the overcrowding, especially in the I-95 area. We had about 74 overcrowded trips for the month. All of them were in the afternoon. So the issue isn't the number of people going in, it's everyone wanting to leave at the same time. And that's why traffic is, so the same thing you experience with traffic, we experience with bus passengers. It also exacerbates because as traffic gets worse, our buses are later and later getting into DC. We account for some of it, but complete shutdowns of the lanes, things like that. So what happens is that everybody's waiting, and then all of our fleet gets in there, and everyone tries to get in as possible. But that exacerbates. The good news is there are 4 routes where it's occurring the most: 612 Gainesville, Pentagon, the Navy Yard, and 943 Stafford, DC. That is where we have the greatest amount of overcrowding, and because they're grant funded, we'll be able to add in the additional trips. Where we are going to have difficulty is the 953 Montclair to DC and the 971 Dale City to DC. Those are locally funded, so we don't have dedicated resources in order to increase those number of trips. That's just something that we're a little nervous about. We'll have really good projections by about July 15th. We'll be able to see what the ridership summer dip looks like. If it's a big crater, we're not as worried, but if it just gets what we expect it to be, we're concerned that we're going to have significant overcrowding on or especially as some of the orders out of the administration have been overturned, that rehiring people, and also businesses are recalling people, private sectors also recalling. So they're not just the government, private sector is following along. So as you can see, that's that ridership trend, overcrowded trips, October, November, December, January, and then you can see the return to work. And by March, it peaks. We added in the additional trips, especially the Lake Ridge route, which really helped. Adding those couple of trips in, and the ones in Manassas really took the edge away from those particular trips. And now what we're experiencing is in those 4 routes that I discussed. So we've had great feedback from the transit town halls. The number one thing customers are talking about is the overcrowding.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I don't know if I asked this question before, here, but not that I want you to unpack it too much, the numbers that we're seeing now, they're looking good, and it looks like we're back to pre-pandemic numbers, but do we also have any criteria in here when you put these numbers together of the number of increase in citizens in your area? So we have the numbers, but what about the number of citizens in the area? Are those numbers increased also? And that's what these numbers are looking, so are you comparing, let's say, 2019, we had 150,000 people and the rights were good, and now when you're doing the criteria again, you say, oh, we have 190,000 people and the numbers are still good. Is that what we're doing?
We don't really look at the general ridership statistics of it in the area. The core for us is the lots have a maximum capacity. So what we're paying attention to is how full are the lots and what kind of ridership are we getting out of it. Saw yesterday combination, slugging, bus, formal meetups to carpool together as well as just the informal slugging process. So we're paying attention to is the lot full but no one's riding. That would let us know that we're not getting good service and utility. We're seeing we're talking about capacity, we're talking about almost full park.
See what I'm.
You're looking at the general trend of population growth.
Yeah.
That extends itself to really looking at the western service growth that we've had along I-66. The opening of the toll lanes, there's been more construction and development, there just is more undeveloped land. But it also reflects why we're now serving Front Royal and also Warrenton, because people are living much more deeper along that corridor. We're also paying attention to development patterns within Prince William County. There's recommendations for housing stock, significant housing stock increases along the Route 28 corridor in the Nopesville area. So this will be south of Manassas, really south of Bristow, pushing out toward Route 17 as it cuts across Fauquier and Stafford County. We're paying attention to that. We're also paying attention to development that has just recently been approved at the Manassas Mall, which would have increased housing density. So that would affect more local routes, but we'll definitely see demand for services. That's why. So we pay attention really more to the development patterns rather than the raw population data.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if you had something else.
Sure. Thank you, thank you for the report as always, Dr. Simon. You mentioned from the metals and income, which is, let's just be real, we've had more rain in the last, say, 2 months than we've had in the last maybe 3 or 4 years combined. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but not really, because my lawn is this high, we mow it, 2 days later it rains and it goes up. And you mentioned sort of the dip in ridership on those radio days. Do we have any way of tracking? Is it very granular? Where we're having dip offs, because I know that we have some shelters, for example, that are covered, so people are likely going to be under that shelter waiting for the bus. But if we have an uncovered bus stop, folks may say, you know what, my usual bus stop doesn't even have a cover over it or shelter. I'm not going to take the bus.
We lose our riders on rainy days with trips that have infrequent service. Because the bus comes every 90 minutes, they can't rely on it, so they find another way to get there. So frequency allows you to overcome an umbrella, keep you dry for only so long.
Right.
And so to your point, the shelter and zones, it's a challenge. And I think we all experience that. Even I'm not running we might just go to our car. I'm not running my errands today. I only like walk in the car. Our passengers get that all the way to the bus stop while waiting for the bus. Just having to stand up waiting that extended time. Shelters absolutely do make a difference. But just we're so limited and it's extremely hard to get this installed. Next, we have our Keolis update, Mr. Wingfield. Floor is yours.
Let's start, Madam Vice Chair, Commissioner, good evening. Before I get started, I want to say we had a really good hiring event in the month of May, early May. It was right after our board meeting. That turned out about 25 very qualified candidates for the position that we've been planning to hire for. And so it's the first time that we've had a hiring event where what we saw come through the door is what we expected. And fortunately for us, we also have our safety department and our training department structured in a manner to where they can actually receive and process through that size training class. So the work that we've been doing ahead of it paid off. We'll start to see if they dividends in about 3 to 5 weeks. Many of these operators come to us by way of school bus, and so they're transitioning. So we're looking forward to that. As we get into the report, the first thing I bring up is missed trips. And we have an uptick in May. Some of that uptick is related to new travel patterns, as well as traffic. Return to work, we have a new obstacle that we're facing, and so we have seen an uptick there. Vehicle availability, we are at target, so we continue to have or meet our target with vehicle availability, as well as with miles between service interruptions, which is good because we're now entering into the days and we're seeing more heat. So it's where you also see homes breaking and things of that nature. So transition to summertime. That being said, that's
Track time. What's the show on time?
on-time performance. So currently we do have a system that tracks on-time performance. We also do direct observations of our own supervisors. Yeah, we do that. No, I have not presented that information in reports. We've been working in-house on standing up some software to the point where we feel like we can present forward. But be happy to provide the information if you have.
In light of that. Right. That's it.
That, now you have a very specific information.
Yeah.
I assure you, it's been very specific.
Okay.
Thank you.
An industry article, Metro is doing its bus design, redesigning its bus network. We did ours a year ago, massive rider improvements, increased on-time performance, all those great things that come with it. So it's a good opportunity if you're interested to take a look and see what the impacts are. The article links to specifically what Metro is doing, but then we're also it gives it some discussion of what we're doing for our one perfect route, how we've gone through our system. Behind and adjusted its time points. Even simple things, getting feedback from drivers to find out that they're always getting hung up at the school zone. And that the crossing guard holds our bus to let 20 cars get out, or all the school buses. Talking to them to let them know, hey, we're a bus too. Let our vehicle get through that intersection so we can on time performance go. Those are just some of the different examples that the article discusses and our staff plan brings up for you. With that, Madam Chair.
Presentation.
Registration. Don't believe we have it.
That's vice chair, here's the bus chair and the Watson.
Jeremy said that.
We're looking for 7.
He said he had a work call, so I know he'll be back.
I looked through the ones he might have.
Thank you. I have his number, so if you can throw it on.
I was asking him.
Yeah, just asking. On the bus.
Can he yell from outside? Just say.
Obviously, did on the other side.
Like,
I went all around except in the, it's 5 minutes.
They're like pretty thorough. And it shows like I got my limit. Just. You know.
The way I look back. I have to say, you're sitting mates, it's not clear how close, the chair and the audience is like. Waiting for. One. New machines.
Oh, I realized that message is see that, I think we lost our forms and stuff.
What happened?
Oh, so I knew
I
that.
just thought he was interesting, so.
That's what I thought.
Cause he left his children.
Can we just have the mice in his chair? Yeah.
So,
We do not have exactly review whatever made the action.
Can we read?
Did he get to that there? Thank you.
so we really don't have anything.
So actually, the chair says he's.
The chair says.
Okay, but when you have top right, it's the chair.
60 for final stages. We're in the rules with the angry.
Let's go around, let's talk, let's board comments.
Okay, no, if, chairman's time,
Okay.
so we can keep moving. I understand your sports game, I'm sorry, I have to.
I was still kind of kidding, I mean, not really, but
Okay.
it's fun.
Yeah, sure, it's not just you.
Right.
It's for everybody else, so they couldn't.
Okay. Just hanging me out to dry. All right, so it is time for the executive director's annual performance evaluation. So tomorrow, please check your email. As all regular members of the commission and alternates who attended a majority of the meetings in 2025, fiscal year 25, will receive an email with a survey link and information about the performance review process. Please complete part 1 of the performance evaluation and submit the survey no later than Friday, June 20th. If it would help people, we probably have time for everybody to put that on their calendar, on their phones right now, on like the 19th. Like, make sure that the evaluation's in.
You too.
So that's what I'm saying, like.
We also, people say, oh, why are you doing this and this? You didn't.
That's right. Well, that's a really good. During part 2 of the process, you'll review the incentive, measure achievements, and complete that evaluation by July 9th, 2025. The PRTC Executive Committee and the full PRTC Board will meet on July 10th to discuss the Executive Director's fiscal year 25 performance review and FY 26 goal. Do you have any questions about that? Just
Can you repeat the whole upstairs?
happy to get back.
I'm just listening to you, yes.
Okay. And Commissioner Allen just did say, like, please fill them out. It is really important. First of all, I think it's respectful to evaluate, to give feedback. I just think it's respectful and it's the right thing to do. And people can't improve if we're not telling them what we want them to do, not that I'm implying that there's. Yes.
I should be able to.
Oh, I'll try this on, yeah, I think. Since being on this commission, it's highly qualified. But it really is, we just had a conversation about our. About things that we expect from staff as a commission. I don't think it's 6 years, I don't think it's 5. And I'm part of that, so I'm there for the accountability for that, but realizing the importance of being in the executive board the last few years, when we're tasked with decisions, we rely on that stuff, so to have that information then come to the full board, we get questions, the director gets questions, but then meanwhile, very few have done the feedback that allows us and helps us to perform our decision making, really does us no justice from an accountability standpoint as well, and as well as to our employees. So I think this year, we really need to think about making sure that they show up with doing it hard. We should at least at minimum have like 90% to respond, like at minimum. Because it gives us a well-informed decision when we make a decision that maybe we'll bring recommendations back to the full board.
Yes.
Thank you. Madam Vice Chair, if I might, I know that the process is painful just because it diverts you from the other things that you're doing to sit down and actually write it, pen behind those text. But another good reason to do it, please timely, is that it will remove a great deal of stress from this Mariner and from this Rodrigo.
Oh my God,
In having to call you and say, please,
No, we don't,
please,
we don't.
please, can you get your evaluations? And it really would be very helpful with, and the turnaround time that it takes from this marriage was complete. But to get you back the information to think about it, and make a decision is determined by how fast you get those. So that's my plea on their behalf.
Last year, Ms. Rodrigo showed up to my office with a baseball.
Well, so, and then also I can add that the chair says he likes that we need him for a vote, so.
I'll get here by 9, or he's gonna lose for
Right.
4 of it.
Share more.
Being new to the commission, at least as a full-time person, do we do a 360 or just evaluate, the evaluation is just with the commission? We don't, or do we do a 360 about it?
It is, the evaluation process, and I think it's 2018 or 19.
We like to do.
Was that the last?
Excuse me. Would we like to do, board comments?
Sure.
Over here, alright. So we'll start now. That's what. You have any say? I want to thank for our secretary director for taking me the, so I myself consider bias is a councilman. Commissioner Ross Smith and our mayor, it took a bus and it's an eye opening. I think that helped me a lot for today. We had an open session for the bus here in order to start to find our future funds or future connections, which will make us better. But yeah, thank you for that, and can't wait for our training event on Friday, Saturday, so everybody's invited.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Holmes. Thank you for stepping in today. I appreciate that. And I just at I was at the conference, the VTA conference. I learned a lot. So it's very interesting, especially the session that I took. It was very the art part was very nice that we were making so much time, spend a lot of time. The art, it's beautiful. I'm planning on bringing it back to our board. I don't think we have a lot of over those spaces and I think we have one at the courthouse, but it'll be nice to have one there. And yeah, and that's it.
Yeah, I too had an opportunity to attend the VTA conference.
That's good.
That's good, all the whole time. It was excellent, learned a lot. Panel dealing with funding and federal government and just all that was going on around that was very interesting. Yeah, very informative session. Glad I had an opportunity to attend.
Usually I don't like to pick up about, employees, but, I think the bus incident, I probably was better off not knowing why it happened, but, the reason why it's a sore spot for me is, that traffic pretty much backed up at the Stafford. And if you're not aware of Stafford's, difficulties with arteries, in terms of transportation, especially in my district, we pretty much can only navigate north and south, we're gonna be fighting Route 1. In my house, I'm landlocked to Route 1, so when Route 1 backed up, I can't exit my neighborhood to go anywhere. And so when that happened, I literally was stuck in my house until whenever hours is exiting in on the Route 1. So hearing that was the decision behind it infuriates me a little bit because there are neighborhoods in my district that not just my house, but for example, my Water Road, there's only one exit for people to get in and out, and even fire and rescue to get in and out. And to think that a decision that, at least to me, was poorly thought out can have such ripple effects, to people's livelihood. I think, I'm glad that there's training and there's education going on, but, I would want to make sure that as an organization, our employees are cognizant of that, because people literally were complaining to me that they can leave the pump for 5 hours. And so it was really bad. And not everyone's blessed, because we're land bound to the north, which is where my is my Quantico, so you can't navigate if you not wanted to. And so I guess I'm a little bit ticked about that reason.
Commissioner Smith?
Not to be repetitive, but the ride along was very beneficial, very exciting. And also to remind you that you're trying to.
First would like to say happy belated birthday to Dr. Schneider. And secondly, just want to make sure we got the gentleman's contact information who had the concerns, because I believe he probably lives just want to make sure we're being responsive, because I know the commission will, but I want to make sure we're also being responsive. And that is it. Thank you.
But I will filibuster a little bit more than Commissioner Franklin did, so
Oh,
I'm just kidding.
I said, okay, but it's Chairman.
Yeah, then I'll stop. Thank you. But I just wanted to echo what Commissioner Franklin just said. He came with some very serious concerns, and obviously those are the types of folks that we really need to be sensitive about, that have no recourse because they have no transportation right. He's trying to get a job, trying to get his life together. It seems like it. The delays on our part have ripple effects. So just wanted to highlight that and uplift that. Also just wanted to commend Dr. Schneider and his team for continuing to have dialogue with developers about different things going on in my district in particular. We have the Holy Square proposal in my district on the Galveston Port in Mid-County. I know you've had a lot of good conversations with the developer on that. I know you've been talking to other developers looking to propose a commercial strip in my district, a lot more newer, more modern, looking to maybe get some models from proper language and even contribute towards microtransit. So that's something I'm really interested in. We'll see how that goes through the process, and once the county attorney and everyone else are vested. So I see that as a really good way to set the stage for us really getting serious about microtransit, especially in these larger suburban areas where it doesn't make any sense to send a fixed route bus down a really deep neighborhood like Hedges Run, but we know we used to, and we know there's a lot of demand there. We have microtransit, and this idea that right now in my district have these sort of clusters of areas that there are 2 or 3 projects going on at the same time. To me, it's a perfect opportunity to get each one of those developers. If they can pitch in 100,000 here, 200,000 there, get that critical mass. And hey, look, now we can find at least a startup bus or a microtransit. So really looking forward to that. The last thing I'll say is that Manassas Mall project that was mentioned earlier is a game changer for Prince William County and for the Manassas area. And we had a really good discussion on Tuesday night about the transit and transportation repercussions and benefits that may cause, not only because of the bridge project itself, but the additional investment that it will spur and other developers coming after that to then have sister projects and things like that, and how it's a really ripe area for us to really lean in on having a lot more service in an area that really needs it, and could become a model for how we sort of develop these other areas. And I say that as the supervisor who represents the area around Potomac Mills, and how that could be another catalyst area for how we do it. So
Just know that you and Supervisor Franklin will be charged to toll the site inspections.
Wow.
As you come through Manassas.
Talk to the mayor about that.
Commissioner Short?
At least somewhere.
Well, I will say, yeah, sure.
We are hosting our biannual Senior Summit for Lazo Building on June 25th. Starts about 10 o'clock in the morning, runs till I think there's a flyer at your seat. That's why it tells you the exact times.
Has that been sent us, because we can put that on our newsletter too.
We'll be sending that out with all the information packet. It's from 10 to 2:30. The chamber has their aging recently program that they do at Potomac Mills Mall. They do that. It's really just stop in, stop by a booth. It's very much a check-in, move along. We have a lot deeper content. So we have formal sessions that are led by a variety of different groups. We generally have principal and police there talking about safety. But there's also opportunities for boards and healthcare. Last year we had, 2 years ago, we had chair Tai Chi. This year it's chair yoga. So it's got to do yoga from your seat.
I would say that yesterday, Dr. Young and I joined Dr. Snyder and Ms. Mitchell at Stafford Borough Commuter Hall.
Yeah.
And we got to greet people as they were coming off the buses. And ask them how they were doing and talk to them about monthly passes and if they also wanted to sign up for the alerts. And that was fun. It's a good time.
That's what you're slugging, carpooling,
Yes, all the things.
all the things.
Madam Vice Chair, I am advised by the chair that 7.5.
Was it the 8 minutes?
Just stop by without the heads.
And Ms. Rodriguez suggested to serve quite nice.
Okay. Well, then I guess we can 7.5. Oh, no, it's not great.
So this is a priority that we put on the budget tonight, that's right?
I mean. Yeah, but it's.
Cautions, I didn't have a 9:30. Must be. So I don't have to leave it on clock.
I can review all that verbally. Vote.
Oh, that was the helpful. That would be helpful if they were time. You do have to leave.
Just can't think of here at the station or something.
Yeah.
No, actually. We're continuing the meeting.
We're gonna.
We're continuing the meeting.
Bob's gonna go ahead and like do all the information stuff while people get to serve.
Oh.
So, all right.
All right,
Go on.
in my booming voice. So what we do have is the first item is the budget and authorization. It is a budget that you authorize us to send to all the jurisdictions. It is as presented. There are no changes. We went to public hearing. We have no formal feedback from that other than customers like more defense. Other great things you did is customers about adopted that when we looked at panels and for replacing them. So we actually got great service feedback. We started the customer come off. Yes, so we're taking care of that. So inside that budget resolution is also bundled all of our insurance renewals for employee benefits, but it's not. So we just have that one large item, want to put that out. But that authorizes us to move into next fiscal year. The second item is the approval of the I-395-95 commuter choice program. You recall we've had some good presentations from our good friends at NCTC.
I don't know.
But he should.
Your legal line, NBC, no presentation, but we have speaking. To go for the, 26.7. So once you approve it, NBC has already approved it, it will go to the Commonwealth of Transportation, it wasn't funding for new projects available.
So I'm gonna ask questions and then help filibuster a little bit to piggyback off of that. We have 5 projects for Omni Ride that are coming through that program. Let's see, yeah, there's 5. Yes, 5, 3 express, 2 local, support transit connectivity both within Richmond County and commuter, express services to be seen. Really appreciate all the work they've been able to do over the last 2 years that program. And I would again, reiterate what I continue to say whenever we talk about this, we're looking forward to the prospect of us locking down some BRT money here in the coming years. To piggyback not only what we've been doing for the last couple years, but also the fact that NBCA has that BRT regional plan that's going through the process. I'm really interested in looking at that, especially as we look at the regional connectivity and how we connect the other parts. So Appreciate that. Thank you.
And then the last item is authorizing me to establish a paratransit appeals committee. An appeals process is required under the ADA for eligibility. So what we have is a third-party vendor that does our certifications. They do this across the country. They very well versed in the ADA process. We do have an appeals process in place, but it's not a formal committee process. It's basically it moves up through the chain of command of the departments. What we're recommending is bringing in a best practice of a committee. We've had 0 denials, so this is not a problem, but what we want to make sure is if we do have additional applications and someone says they have been denied, they have the right to appeal. What this does is includes 1 staff member from the PRTC group, 1 staff member from the operations group at appeal list, and then the professionals that are part of the process. That's what we'll make our committee, and then I'll make it. Formally required process. So those are the 3 items that will be for you for vote, Mr. Andrew. Questions? I think I saw it. Looks better when you get my son. I tried to see it, right? That's not even the screen, Mr.
Yes, it's in.
You know, it's better than say, don't stop talking. Get the bill for them, try it away.
So right, it seems. So.
I like this plan. For this way your country ever. It's not as what it is. No, I didn't mind with the. That's like good things.
Yeah. All right, Madam Chair, I move that we do items 11.1 through 11.3.
Moved by Mr. Buckby, seconded by Commissioner Moore. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Thank you.
Right, we're gonna put the,
I just have a question, and the fact that he was not here, so we can have to. Make us present before we vote. on
she
it.
registered. Yeah.
Did you already do it? Okay.
That's just funny.
I'm sorry.
It's a good brand though, but yeah, he wrote down.
I didn't see it. No, she didn't respond.
No, sir, here the jury.
Yes.
Most of it were.
Good job.
Good job, my friend. Good job.
Good job, advice.
No, you know, you feel like. They took it. You just got to be. Right? We hold it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so.